right, let's keep it flowing, because on the previous segment we were talking about President Obama, Vladimir Putin, holding what a White House official calls a constructive discussion today on the sidelines of the G20. And they say the two leaders talked about the crisis in Syria and the fight against ISIS. Let's bring in our Fox News political insiders, John LeBoutelier, former Republican congressman for New York, Pat Caddell, a former pollster for President Jimmy Carter and Fox News contributor, and via satellite tonight, but always close in our hearts, Doug Schoen, former pollster for President Bill Clinton and Fox News contributor as well. All right, so when I say keep the conversation flowing, moments ago, Lieutenant General Newton was telling us, you know what, he's flown with the Russians, can't say whether or not it would happen here. My question is, do we do a deal with Russia over Syria to go out and do what France has started tonight with these 20 to 30 strikes and lay them out?
It's possible. I mean, they had a Russian airliner blown up by ISIS. You have to assume ISIS is taking credit for it.
And I've heard you say when you go against Russia, it's not like anybody else in the world.
Right, but I still have to ask this question, and it'll go in the press conference tomorrow. Who is going to be on the ground doing the fighting, house to house, town to town?
Peshmerga?
Well, they'd like to, and Obama's going to have to get over this ridiculous agreement where we can't arm the Peshmerga without Baghdad giving approval. Screw that. We have to give them weapons, but there are not enough of them. We need other troops. Now, I think it ought to be Muslim Arab troops. It should be Jordanians, Egyptians, Saudis on the ground. It won't be
Saudis. The Saudis won't even take any refugees, John.
Well, okay, fine. But Egyptians and Jordanians, the problem is they used to be our best allies until Obama came along.
So maybe they would. I mean, they're pretty active in Yemen right now.
Well, but he ticked off our best allies, and he's gotten in bed with Cuba and Iran, and it's a mess.
They don't trust him. And we have other, the Sunnis and the Shiites. The problem here is that the president, I hate to say this, has so managed to screw this up beyond all comprehension. Because now we have the Russians in, and now we're talking about, we're going to work with the Russians. But the Russians are not going to give up Assad, or they're not going to give up their party there. The Turks want Assad out. They want them done. They also want to kill Kurds. We have mismanaged all of this to a fairly well. And, and we're now in bed with the Iranians and, as you said, the Cubans, for God's sakes.
All right, I have a question for you, Doug, and it kind of comes via Kathy Gloria on my Twitter page. I may morph it a little bit. She says, too bad our military is not allowed to hit ISIS like France is. France is politically in kind of an interesting position right now. We don't know what's going to happen at that quote-unquote extraordinary meeting with the parliamentary leaders and President Hollande tomorrow that he's been talking about. But, we're kind of in that window of he's probably going to get a lot of support from his people on the ground in France. Go do what you got to do. That window is not open forever.
That is correct, which is why the United States needs to respond assertively, provide international leadership. My response to John LeBoutelier, and indeed it's my response to Secretary Clinton, is to defeat them. We can't take anything off the table. I understand that the bulk of the fighting has to be done by Arabs against ISIS who have a stake in the region. But we can't rule anything out. We have to invoke Clause 5. We have to rally the American people and the political leadership of this country to fight an international terrorist organization that has declared war on us and is not backing down anytime soon. They've said they're coming here. They've said they're coming back to Western Europe. We have to take them seriously.
Well, we especially have to take them seriously since that's exactly what they're doing. All right, let's shift a little bit. You know that the Lieutenant General and I were just talking. He came back to have a second conversation because we were getting more information on this Gitmo detainee situation. They're being transferred to the United Arab Emirates. What are your thoughts on that, Pat?
Well, I just think it's the stupidest move, whether it is incompetence or whether it is on purpose. And I fear with these people, purposes of sending a signal, like you, John, said earlier, is a problem. We are signaling weakness always. That is over and over again, the actions of this administration. It's incompetence of the first order. But look, we're talking about detainees. About refugees. Mr. Rhodes got up today and lied and said we have a massively wonderful vetting system. The head of the FBI says we don't. We are committed to things that make them want to feel good. His little bubble world has crashed. And what I'm concerned about In 1990, George Bush put a coalition together that had 28 Arab countries with troops on the ground, as well as the French and the British and ourselves. And you know what? That's what this president needs to do. But I'm a fear he won't. I'm a fear he will undermine NATO and have his great dream of NATO disappearing.
Graham Bubby says on Twitter, Obama just slapped us across the face by letting 5 Gitmo prisoners out to carry out their war, and we do nothing. That's that person's opinion on Twitter tonight. We're watching our social media pages for your input in all of this.